brand entertainment, those two words put together, there's a huge spectrum of work and things that encompasses. So I want to introduce the panelists. Here to my left is John Jelley. He's the Senior Vice President, Product and User Experience, Peacock and Global Streaming at NBCUniversal. We have James Kuczynski, who's a Senior Creative Director at Duolingo. And Margot Rodde, who's the founder of Creators Corp, which I will ask her to define because it is an incredibly interesting company. But I wanted to start with you guys and ask you how you even think of the words brand entertainment together. Like, what does that mean to you when you think about that? James, start with you. Yeah. John, yes.
It's great to be here. Thank you. When we think about brands, we're really thinking about fandoms. Peacock has an incredible array of fandoms, from Love Island to Traitors to SNL. And so we're really thinking about how all the different ways you can engage with those brands. And so for us, it's obviously those amazing shows that you can come and stream. Right. But we're also thinking about what are the sort of more interactive, snackable ways that throughout the day you can engage with those brands. And I think we have an amazing canvas by having so much fandom on the platform to just do a lot with them. And both the brands and the consumers really resonate whenever we experiment, whether it's interacting with a game, looking at short-form video, or even doing more interactive while you're watching. So all of that is areas that we think are ripe for branded entertainment.
Nice. James, you guys have had Duo in all kinds of different situations. How do you guys think about entertainment as it applies to your brand?
Yeah, I mean, entertainment for us is just core to our brand, right? We're a gamified way to learn. Everything's about making it fun. And, for us, we kind of also lean into fandoms a lot, and we try and find the intersection of language learning and also entertainment. So areas like anime, other fandoms such as, even webtoons, we're trying to go after places where people really love what they love, and then where can we help them get the most out of what they love is really the role that we have with a lot of our branded entertainment partnerships. Nice.
Margot, I'll first just ask you to give me an elevator pitch about Creators Corp, because it's a fascinating idea, and then you can tell me how brands are involved in that.
Of course. So Creators Corp is a UGC game studio evolving on a Fortnite creative platform, which is a part of the Epic ecosystem. It's not Fortnite, it's Fortnite Creative. And Fortnite Creative, you can think of it as the YouTube of gaming, right? So we make original game, we make our own games. We also make games in partnership with IP holders and entertainment brands. And we also integrate brands in successful mini games. Sometimes ours and sometimes other creators' games. So that's what we do in a nutshell. And then to come back to your questions, obviously for us, the intersection of branded entertainment and gaming has been almost like created by Fortnite with all the IP partnerships, right? In Fortnite, the game is made of every possible partnerships through skins that you can imagine, right? Spider-Man, Marvel, Disney, sports stars, everyone is in Fortnite at this point. So for us, in the minigame space, it's kind of like a similar situation, but where we go after these partnerships on our own without Fortnite being involved. Yeah. But it's following the same trend, and we do a lot of it.
Well, I'll come back to you. You guys have made games for Steph Curry, for Dude Perfect, the U.S. Open, I believe. But one thing you said when we were speaking earlier about, there's a difference between entertainment brands creating games and consumer brands creating games, and one being better than the other. Tell me a little bit about that balance, because it sounds like the consumer brands in gaming has been around for a long time, not as creators, but what are the opportunities for the entertainment brand, like a Dude Perfect, for example, when it comes to creating games as a brand extension of theirs?
Yeah. So what I was explaining earlier is, there are different UGC platforms in gaming: Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft, and some new ones coming up.
Yeah.
Fortnite is a little bit particular in the sense that the barriers to entries are quite high, and the audience is still very much fans of Battle Royale, the combat, the main game. So when you're a brand, I think it's important to like understand the audience and what the audience wants. Otherwise, you could make a game and flop. And we see that a lot with consumer brands, particularly.
Yeah.
With entertainment brand, it's the same thing. But obviously, like there are like some major crossover between certain entertainment brands and shows, movies, music artists, sports stars. Yeah. And when it's done well, it can succeed massively. With regards to consumer brand, I think like we are advocating against creating your own game and actually integrating in already successful games that have a massive audience that are appealing to the audience. Yeah. That's when we see like great results, and that's what we did for US Open, for example. It was actually an integration in a game that wasn't ours. It's another creator on the platform. We connect brands with other creators.
Okay.
And this particular game is very well designed for brand integration, and the game was incredibly successful. Like over 6 million total play, millions of impressions, and the brand was over the moon. They're doing it again this year, so that's really a great way to approach the platform.
Nice, John. You guys have made sort of mini games around your IP and not within your own platform. I'm wondering, like, yeah, how do you? Well, maybe explain a little about that, like how that came about and why you guys chose to do that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, when we think about engagement on an app like streaming, we're trying to think broader than just streaming. So we're thinking about how do users come back frequently around the fandoms they love? And so we took that question and thought, well, what could we do in the app that would be really compelling? And when we look at the user behavior, we're all consuming games, social, other short-form video, and other behaviors on mobile. And we want to really lean into that. 90% of people under 44 consume these mini games today, on average about 15 minutes a day. So we thought, well, we have these amazing fandoms. Let's try bringing these games familiar, to your point, familiar games. We're not trying to invent new games that are simple formats that people can engage with and love to play, whether it's sorting or trivia. And we've brought a lot of our IP into those games, either very closely, like making a prediction about what's going to happen in this episode of Traitors, or on the Premier League that night, or more loosely, this show is set in New York, and here are some questions about New York. And we're really experimenting as part of these tests with what does that do to engagement? I mean, so far, we've seen some really interesting, encouraging signals. We've doubled in the 2 iterations of the test the number of people coming back frequently to these games. And so we're going to keep testing with different IP, with different game formats, and see how compelling that can be when it's all in one place. Others have looked at games on other apps. You have to download them or go to a different platform. We're taking a slightly different approach, where we're bringing it together alongside vertical video around those same IPs, so that you can catch up on what's happening on Traitors last night. You could see a preview of what's coming tonight, and then if you want, you can play a game. Now, these are optional. This is not, if you want to watch the whole show, we'd love that to happen as well. So this is really another way of engaging. And whenever we've done these tests where we're giving people more and different ways of consuming, we've just been amazed by the willingness and almost the enthusiasm of users to experiment with new types of engagement on our platform.
And they stay on the platform longer, which is also...
Absolutely, that's the goal. Come back more frequently.
Right.
It's a big driver of...
James might be playing the Traders game after this.
Yes.
I think he's, James, for Duolingo, like, my familiarity with... You guys have done some really cool integrations. Most fresh in my mind, because I was talking to Netflix CMO Marion Lee a couple weeks ago, but the Squid Game, the Learn Korean or Else. And one thing I really liked about that was, obviously ties into the show in such a great way, but that it was also based in a user truth of your own platform from the first season, when just organically when Squid Game was exploding, the learners in Korean like exploded, I guess. And so I'm wondering how do you think about where Duolingo shows up in entertainment? I'll start there.
Yeah, I think, for us, we really try to be part of culture. So we look at like the top IPs, the top entertainment, top fandoms that people really love, And just as you mentioned, when Squid Game Season 1 came out, the first week we saw a 40% increase in people learning Korean on our platform, which was massive. So, we saw that opportunity and we started to...
Like, what do we do with this?
Yeah, we're like, okay, this is great. And, it got that, it got into like press headlines and other areas like that. And for us, we were recording Netflix and like, all right, when's Season 2 coming out? When is Season 2? And it's like a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, like, hey, what's going on? Yeah. But, for us, it was really about, again, tapping into that fandom, like finding that intersection of how can we help this, fans of a specific topic get the most out of what they love. And that really is the core question that we ask for every single partnership that we have. Because if we're not adding value, then it just feels like another brand attaching themselves onto another IP.
Right.
And it just feels like another partnership that's just out there.
How do you think about, because I know you guys also had a partnership with Sony Music, I believe, like integrating some of their artists, 60 or something like that, into your platform. That's a different kind of form of integrating entertainment, and this is into the product. How do you think about that? Because there's putting the platform into entertainment or into culture, but then there's bringing it into your platform as well.
Yeah, for sure. So that's part of our music course that we have, and we have several different different courses that we have around music, and we partnered with with Sony to release a few different tracks that we identified would kind of bridge the gap between Gen Z into older songs that still had a lot of love for them, and ones that span different genres, so that we can hit a bit of a global audience. So we're definitely thinking a bit more of a strategic lens on that front as well, and finding the right things that can kind of tap into our global audience.
Margot, so you, in a previous life, you had helped brands, get into gaming where they fit, and now you're working with creators to build games around IP and also getting brands into games. How has the way brands think about where they fit in gaming changed most in recent years?
I mean, I think over the last few years, 10 years, brands have realized that they have to meet their audience where they are, and younger audiences are, in-game, in highly social games like Roblox and Fortnite. The trend in game is also changing, and the new wave of user-generated game is still fairly new, and the opportunities are huge in that space because you can basically create whatever you want at this point. It's no longer a partnership that you have to have with the game developer or publisher. It's something that you can do on your own with, whether you have your own team internally or you use a studio like our studio or an independent creator. You can basically build whatever you want, right? So I think that's become a lot easier for brands to get in. I think the place where there's still needs for improvement is really understanding the audience and understanding what works and how to not put them off. A lot of the time you see branded experience where the brand is everywhere and it's not something that the player necessarily want to see in the game that they love and want to play. So being authentic is really the key there. And like we were saying earlier, really understanding what will work, especially when you're a show or a movie or an entertainment IP like a sports star. Not everybody is known by that type of audience. Not everybody. And actually, I was telling you earlier about experience with Steph Curry, right?
I was going to ask about that, yeah.
So we were 100% convinced that this was going to be a huge success, right? We spent a lot of time working on it, and the campaign that we created on Steph's social platform went incredibly well. I think at the time, the tweet around the game coming up was the most tweeted, retweeted, and commented on tweet in 6 months.
Okay.
However, we didn't manage to convert his audience, into the game. And actually, the influencer that we had onboarded to help us with that campaign was the one that really got people in the game. That kid is a massive fan of Steph Curry and did it for us because he loves Steph so much, and because of the opportunity to meet Steph. But the reality is, he's the one who drove the success of the game rather than Steph himself, which was very interesting, right? So really, when you make a decision of like being a part of a game, making your own game. You really have to understand, who's going to be wanting to play.
Yeah, that's
just to build on that, I think it's really important as well, not just to think about people coming in the game, but how you're going to get them to stay and feel progression. And so I think one of the things we're thinking about is, since we have these fandoms and people are kind of a little competitive, seeing where you rank against others in that fandom has actually been a really great way to get people to come back. And thinking about leaderboards and how do you integrate that into really the whole experience around a particular piece of IP. Because I think if the user can feel like you're testing their knowledge and they're themselves part of the game in a way and associated with the brand, they're going to be much more open to playing it versus it feeling sort of somehow forced or non-organic. So I think to build on your point, those tight connections about when does it feel most appropriate to have a game and an IP and bringing them together, I think is something we're really thinking about.
James, like one thing, there's the conscious choices. Well, they're all conscious choices, but there's the more obvious, like the Squid Game partnership campaign where you guys are out in culture. But then there's like the more, I don't know how to describe it, but like when you guys showed up at Dua Lipa concert and there was just duos were everywhere and it just became its big story. How do you think about the idea of kind of that, I don't know, more formal entry into culture and less so, and how do you guys think about that balance?
Yeah. So there's two things. There's, Duo has a crush on Dua Lipa and has had a...
She was devastated.
Devastated. We actually, when we killed Duo, we sent her Duo's ashes, and she still hasn't replied yet. But yeah, so we did show up to a Dua Lipa concert a few times. But I the most recent one I think was actually we showed up to a Charlie XCX Sweat Tour.
Oh yeah.
During the first night show, and it was just about 25 of our employees, duos, put on our duo mask, showed up at the concert, and it was Brat, it's green, we're green. It was kind of as simple as that. And for us, it was just we showed up, Charlie saw us out, called us out, and we had an amazing time. We shared that content and got like 25 million views. And then after that, we actually had a follow-up conversation with Charlie around like, hey, what's 2.0? How do we actually create this engagement, ongoing with you? But, for us, it's about finding what people are talking about. Everyone's talking about Brat at the time. Everyone's talking about Charlie. And it just made sense for us to kind of jump into culture. But, we don't take ourselves too seriously sometimes. So while we may court a brand for entertaining purposes, such as Netflix or even like Peacock, right, for a year or two, there's still those opportunities that just are coming up in culture that we just jump on.
John, the one thing that struck me with the idea of creating mini games within your own platform was that I really like when brands are actually do something, yes, entertaining, but also like utility. And obviously, gaming is a different kind of utility. But how do you think of that as delivering utility to your users in order for get them to stay longer? And then where does that fit into the Peacock brand strategy?
It's a good question. I mean, I think the great thing about running these as tests, as experiments, is that we can actually ask consumers in the tests, how is this serving a role in your entertainment life? And we see that in the morning, maybe before they're ready to watch a whole episode or a whole show, they're actually consuming these games more. And then as the day progresses, you find that maybe they're coming back on the commute home. So I think we're sort of learning about where do these experiences best fit into people's lives, and when actually to promote them and surface them more prominently, because there's so many choices. In an app like Peacock, you could be watching the Premier League, you could be watching NFL, you could be consuming the latest season from the Bravo universe. So finding the ways that feel connected to that user, and so we're really thinking carefully about where to place these games so that people discover them if they're a big fan of those shows, sending notifications or connecting it into their onboarding experience. And that's some of the kind of what's coming next, I suppose, is starting to think about these learnings we're getting about engagement and really thinking about streaming more than just streaming. What are the other utilities? Games is one. As I mentioned, vertical video is another very common expectation of users. maybe they don't want to go to TikTok, or maybe they do, but they also want them in one place around the shows that they love. And I think we're very agnostic about where that's consumed, and actually we think there's a great opportunity to actually maybe expand the kinds of content in that format that we could show. So we're looking now at what we could do around the NBA, which is coming to Peacock in the fall. We just had SNL 50, so we had some fantastic content from SNL, the concert, as well as the main anniversary show that we were able to stitch into these great gaming and video formats that really users hadn't seen before. So that element of surprise, I think people are so open to being surprised in a nice way that we're looking to really tap into that.
Is there a, Margot, I'll start with you. Is there a you touched on the challenges with the Steph Curry project, but is there a project to you that you guys have done or are working on that kind of embodies or illustrates sort of your ideal, like what you think for that space?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that we've learned from working on a platform is that you still need some level of marketing to push a game to the top. Unless you are a legacy game, and we're not a legacy game. There are 10 games that have been performing extremely well for years now on the platform before even the launch of UEFN. But partnering with influencers is really like the way to go with regards to anything you do, whether you're an entertainment brand, a brand, or you're launching an original game. Obviously, the more crossover there is between the influencer audience and the platform, the better. So we work with a lot of Fortnite-specific influences. But you know, the Dude Perfect and GoPro example is the perfect example, whereby you have an influencer that's more mainstream, but has a strong gaming audience as well, and a brand that is looking to be integrating in that game. But the game is an original game that's basically created between the influencers and us, right? In this situation specifically, Dude Perfect created a video on the theme of dodgeball. We created a dodgeball game, and GoPro came in the game and was a brand partner of the game. And that is basically the ideal scenario, right? Because on one hand, we control the creative, so we're able to really build a game that resonates with the audience and get the number of plays that we're looking for. The brand is getting access to a huge influencers through the game. The game is obviously promoted by that huge influencer, so any videos, any content that's created includes the brand in it at a much lower price point than it would be to like integrate directly into like a Dude Perfect video. So that's really the ideal scenario for us for what we do with brands specifically.
Nice. Yeah, and that ties back into your point about like, okay, so you've got Dude Perfect creating the game or being the game, but there's a consumer brand, GoPro, being a part of it,
Exactly.
but it's not a GoPro dodgeball game would not work at all the same way at all. James, how about you in terms of maybe give us a peek under the hood in terms of what's going on right now with you guys? What obviously you just killed off your most popular character, but what kind of, whether it's an entertainment partnership or you guys doing the entertaining, what's kind of a project that kind of embodies your approach or your philosophy when it comes to that?
Yeah. So Duo thankfully has resurrected, if anyone hasn't seen. But yeah, I think for us, we really try and find this balance of looking at long-term, let's say, entertainment moments in culture that we can expect to really be big in about a year or 2 years even. And then juxtaposed next to that is the reactive things that are just happening in real time. And I think what's interesting is that, for us at least, the more that we're able to engage people in real time, the impression numbers are a lot higher than something that we plan long term.
Okay.
However, the longer term projects are the ones that allow us to build brand and more brand lore, actually. And I think that's something very important for us as we build our brand. We've really built our brand listening to all of our fans and followers. And I think that's something that over the course of the last several years, we just keep leaning into. So we as we're looking ahead, we're looking for ideas that allow our fans and people on the internet to just create our brand for us. Right. We listen to them, we lean in, and then we create content that they want to share. So it's this ongoing fuel. Like we talk about your next project is in the comment section in your social feeds. And we really live by that. Yeah.
Interesting. John, how about you? Like, is there a particular, whether it's one of the games or something coming that embodies this approach that you've been talking about the most, or in your mind that sticks out?
I mean, we're sort of thinking about being definitely fan first, but also where are opportunities to be kind of play first. And I think as we look ahead to things like the NBA, which is coming in the fall, and we look to things like Wicked, which is landing on the platform soon, how can we embody those amazing brands and partners in ways that are surprising and delightful? And so, to your point, those do need planning, particularly when it involves product development. You've got to really think that through. And we try to build things that we can extend to other IPs. So, for example, we build a huge number of features from multi-view to live actions to an AI recap of the Olympics. And we took a lot of those learnings, and we're now thinking about, well, what other sports would they apply to? In fact, we used some of the mechanics we built for the Olympics for SNL 50 concert, which was on Peacock. So it's another live event. It's similar level of fandom for a different thing. So I think as we look ahead to the content, we're trying to make the connections between the learnings we've got in individual moments like the Olympics, like SNL, and thinking, how would I apply that in a really cool way that builds on the actual behavior of the consumer? We're not trying to force something on them, but actually builds and encourages even deeper fandom around these big moments.
Nice. Well, my last question for you guys is around advice, maybe based on conversations internally and certainly with clients and people. Like, what advice, Margot, would you give a brand that's thinking about, and whether that's maybe it's an entertainment brand or maybe it's a brand who's wanting to become integrated into one of your games, what kind of advice would you give to a brand that's thinking about getting into this space in a more meaningful way?
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, like I've said, there are different platforms, and there's Roblox and Minecraft and Fortnite. We specialize in Fortnite, and so in the Fortnite space, what I find super interesting is brands go direct to Epic all the time to ask them for advice and to ask them how they're supposed to be integrating in Fortnite creative. Okay. And Epic has not been the best advisor for this brand, to be honest. So I would say, rather than going to Epic, go to the studios that perform in the space, because we know and understand we make our own original games. We have to generate revenue from these games, right? So we spend all our time trying to understand the algorithm, trying to understand the marketing side of things, and what makes and the audience, obviously, and what makes a game successful. I think, Epic is not in that space anymore. They do it for their own game, for Fortnite main game. They've done all this amazing partnership, but with regards to the Fortnite creative platform, I really believe that creators and mini studios in the space know better. So I would say, come to us rather than Epic direct.
I like your comparison for that platform as being like the YouTube of gaming. And so that makes sense to go to you guys as opposed to
exactly.
Epic. James, brands that are wanting to dabble a little bit more in pop culture or significantly invest or try to be more a part of it. I mean, obviously, it looks easy from the outside, and I know it's not. What advice would you give to folks wanting to think about where they are in culture a bit more?
Yeah, I think you really have to meet people in the conversation where it's happening. So when I think about, for us, what has really worked is jumping into the comment section of a social feed or a social post where a conversation is happening, and you need to show up in a very authentic way, right? You can't just show up. I see a lot of brands who just come in and they just make something witty and they try and capitalize on the conversation, but there's nothing really authentically connecting them to that moment. And I think that's probably one of the biggest missteps that I think we see in a lot of brands. Even when we killed off Duo, I think the comment section had about like 40 brands just trying to jump in so that they can hit their quarterly KPIs to get impressions. But there wasn't anything engaging for them in this place. So for us, whenever we show up within a piece of culture or conversations, really looking in and leaning in to current trends, but then showing up in a way that is relevant, again, in a way that we're helping them get the most out of what they love or helping them build that connection to that narrative. So, yeah. That's
great. John, I know we were mostly talking about you working within your own brand, but I think there is some stuff there for other brands, like whether I mean even a Duolingo when you're talking about doing things on your own platform. There are those.
I think authenticity. I think we've talked a lot about that. I think it's really key. We did a fantastic integration with VW for the Californians ad connected to SNL. And it was incredibly funny, and it worked brilliantly for the brand, and it ran in the Oscars as well as obviously on all of the NBC.
One of my favorite sketches.
I love that.
Yeah, so it felt completely natural, and everyone's delighted by it, right? The creators of it enjoyed it, the brand enjoyed it. And I think finding those organic moments where it really feels like you're connecting and getting the creator excited in the tool that you're creating, whatever it is. Because the more the creator is excited, the more they're going to want to deploy it and use it and talk about it. And back to that influencer point, the more there is that conversation that feels natural and genuinely hyped and buzz rather than forced, I think the more success you're going to see.
Nice. John, James, Margot, thanks so much for being here. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.